Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight with Digging Deep. We're just going to take a scripture passage tonight and dig into it and talk about it. And so I haven't been here for a few weeks because I was on vacation, and we got back last week. We went to Ireland, and one of our favorite places to be. So we had a good time there. And we've gone there more than once, and we try to stay in a different place every time. And so this time we were pretty far northwest, and we were on the ocean. And so, temperatures were in the 60s most days. We were loving it. We thought it was great with the cooler weather since we had left 90 degrees. And it was really interesting, though, because I kept seeing people in coats. So I guess they thought it was really chilly, but we really liked it. I guess it's all about your perspective, right? If you're used to one climate over another. Now, while we were there, we went to Donegal town, and we took this river walk, and we walked. It was about a mile and a half. You just walk down this nice path, and there were a lot of fairy houses attached to trees, and a couple of wood carvings at one point that kind of looked like gnomes. But I mean, they were pretty big carvings. And so we wondered what's at the end. And so when we got to the end, we walked a little farther and noticed that we were just in a housing area. So we just decided we'd turn around and go back because we wanted to go back into the town. And I said, well, this will give us a different perspective because now we'll be walking back the other way. And not 2 minutes after I said that, I look over to my right through some trees, and I see the ruins of an ancient something or other. I can't really see because it's across the river, but it's these stone buildings that are, some of them are kind of broken, fallen down. And I said, did you see this the first time we walked by? And Tony said, no, I didn't see it. And so it was interesting that the first time I walked by, I missed it completely. And then when I walked by it the second time, I could see it from a distance. Now we went back into town, went on the other side of the river, and walked to what are the ruins of 15th century abbey. And we walked around all that, and there's also a cemetery all around. And some of the stones are so old you can't read them, and others are, a lot more recent. So I missed it completely. I saw it from a distance, and then I saw it up close where I could actually see the names and dates of the people buried there. So it's perspective. We all see things from our own individual perspectives. And it can be easy to forget that there are other perspectives. For example, if you have a toddler coming to your house, it's a good idea to get down on the floor and see things from the perspective of that very small person who's coming to your house, because you will see potential dangers that you would never think of because you're tall and you don't generally stick things into light sockets and so forth. But that's a different perspective. Now we have to be intentional about seeing different perspectives. It's like the old saying that you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes to really be able to understand their experience. So let's consider the perspective Jesus had when he lived here on earth, because he had the perspective of being human and also the perspective of being divine. So I'm going to read from Matthew 9, and I'm going to start at the end of the chapter. This might sound familiar to some of you. So I'm starting in verse 35, chapter 9. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Jesus saw the world through the perspective of humanness. He had difficult experiences when he was on earth. He met lots of people who were living in their own personal hell on earth. When I experience pain or grief, betrayal, I know that I have a God who knows what all that feels like, and that God can see life from our perspective as humans. Now, through his divinity as God in the flesh, Jesus could see the image of God in every person. So, of course, when he looked at these crowds of people, he had compassion on them. I mean, he was their creator. And so, of course, he would see the image of God reflected in each person. Now, it says that when he looked at the crowds, he had compassion for them. He didn't have pity, he had compassion. Pity means that you see someone suffering and you feel bad for them. But compassion is seeing someone who's suffering, feeling bad, and then doing something to help ease the suffering. If we go back and we look at chapters 8 and 9 in Matthew, we'll see all the things that Jesus was doing. Jesus heals a man with leprosy. Jesus heals the centurion's servant. Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus calms the storm. Jesus restores 2 demon-possessed men. Jesus heals a paralyzed man. Jesus raises a dead girl and heals a sick woman. Jesus heals the blind and the mute. Now, I don't know if they all happened that quickly in that progression, but I think there's a reason why Matthew put them all here together, so that we could see what Jesus had done and see that Jesus got up close and personal. He touched people, even though it made him, a Jew, unclean. That story of him being asked by the man with leprosy, will you make me clean? And it says Jesus touched him and said, yes. And then he was healed. So Jesus didn't, hands off, heal the man, and then shake his hand. He touched the man with leprosy, and then he healed him. And I just think that's a beautiful example of how Jesus was and how we need to be. Jesus was up close, personal. He got vulnerable. He was open. He listened and interacted with people. He saw their needs, their feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, and he was moved to compassion for them. It says he saw them as sheep without a shepherd. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of sheep in Ireland. I know, you probably already know that. But they wander all over. They're all over fields. You drive by, and they're just randomly everywhere. There was one up on the top of this cliff, and I thought, a few more steps, he's going to go over the edge. And then there were some that would just lay down on the road because the blacktop was warm. And so alongside the road, there would just be sheep laying there. One time we were being driven somewhere because we don't drive on the wrong side of the road. We're a little apprehensive about that. But anyway, I think we were in a bus. The driver had to stop because there were 3 sheep in the middle of the road butting heads together. And they didn't care there was a bus there. Finally, we had to go around them. But it's just crazy how they are scattered everywhere. And yet each farmer knows which sheep are his or hers. And with the help of that trusty sheepdog, at the end of the day, all those sheep are gathered in to the right farmer's pen. Jesus saw the people like sheep who didn't have a shepherd to gather them in and take care of them. Jesus said the harvest is plentiful. And I think sometimes people think he was talking about, we need to go out and save people. But I think what he was talking about here is that there are a lot of people who are helpless and hopeless and need care. There are a lot of people who need some help. And that was the perspective of Jesus. He saw people as needing help, needing care. Now, my own perspective is a lot more narrow, and I will say judgmental. I'd be glad to help Jesus separate the sheep from the goats, the good people from the bad people. I think I could help. I think I could help with that. From my perspective, it's tempting to put labels on people, to decide who's right and who's wrong, even though I know that nobody is all good or all bad. Just like separating sheep and goats. We're not all bad or all good. Now, there are people who make me so angry because of what they believe, what they support, what they do. But that's the problem, isn't it? It seems like so many of us are angry at each other, unable to listen to each other, unable to stop talking about how right we are. Now, until I can stop being angry, stop making assumptions about people, stop talking, nothing changes. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, in his book, The Dignity of Difference, said, "The greatest single antidote to violence is conversation. Speaking our fears, listening to the fears of others, and in that sharing of vulnerabilities, discovering a genesis of hope." If I can just stop for a moment and try to see the perspective of others, if I can stop talking and trying to get my point across and prove that I'm right, if I can be curious and learn who they are, not just what I've labeled them as, maybe I can see their perspective. Maybe I can understand them a little bit better. I still might not agree with them, but at least I can understand where they're coming from, maybe. At least I can see them as a person and not a label. And I might just be able to see the image of God in them. And maybe they won't agree with me, but they just might be able to see the image of God in me. Because at the end of the day, at the end of time as we know it, that's all that's left. The image of God in you and me and everyone. It's all about perspective. So we have Greg with us tonight. And what are you singing tonight, Greg?
It's kind of funny that you're talking about perspectives. This is a song that I'm sure some of the listeners will know. It's a song called Let It Rise. But I really like a particular style of music, so it's all a matter of perspective. And I want to play this one in my own way and my own perspective. How's that?
That sounds good.
Let the glory of the Lord rise among us. Let the glory of the Lord rise among us. Let the praises of the King rise among us. Let it rise. Let the songs of the Lord Arise among us, let the songs of the Lord arise among us, let the joy of the King arise among us, let it rise. Let it rise. Let the glory of the Lord arise among us. Let the glory of the Lord arise among us. Let the praises of the King rise among us. Let it rise. Let the songs of the Lord arise among us. Let the songs of the Lord rise among us. Let the joy of the King rise among us. Let it rise. Let it rise. Let it rise.
Oh, that was excellent. Thanks, Greg. Whew. So here's to having the courage to see other points of view. I think it really does take courage to be vulnerable enough to listen to others. Sometimes I think it's easier to engage in debate with those that we disagree with. And it's harder to just listen and try to see their point of view. Not everyone will be willing to listen to us. And we don't have to convince them that they're wrong and that we're right. And I think that sometimes we just need to change the subject. There are times that's the right thing to do. Because the day that all God's people agree on everything, I think, is probably the day after Jesus comes back. But until then, we'll keep trying to see God's image in everyone we meet. So, blessings on you this day, whenever you watch this. And if you found this was useful, if it was entertaining, if nothing else, for the song, won't you share this with your friends? Just share this on your feed, and maybe somebody else needs to hear it too. So before I go, let's say a prayer together. God, help us to be willing to listen. Help us to imitate Jesus in the way that he was up close and personal with people, that he listened, that he touched. He was not standoffish with people. And he cared about everybody, even the ones that didn't agree with him, even the ones who seemed to be out to get him. He still cared about them as well. So help us, God, to see different perspectives, whether it's listening to someone or getting down on the level of a child. In all that we do, God, may we bring glory to you. Amen. So until next time, I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll be back here on Monday for Josh Wonders Why, and Josh will be wondering about something new. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it'll be good. So until then, see you later.